Hello, everyone. I am here today with a badass woman. Let me tell you right now, Tana Amen has changed the game in the nutrition space. She is very well known for her tips, her principles. I love following her on Instagram for all those tips, but what else she is wildly known for is serving and helping people with trauma. She's an author. She's been through a whole heck of a lot, and you are going to love her just as much as I do. Thank you for being here today.
Are you kidding me? I love you, Emily.
I love
so
you.
fun.
You're the real deal.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
Oh my goodness. You came and spoke at Jake and mine event, and you blew everybody away.
And I had no idea we had so much in common, so it's so fun.
So much in common. Like, just let's start there. Let's start with like your upbringing and what has shaped you and made you just so strong here today as we sit here. Like, I want everyone to hear your story because we did connect on that. You know, I'm like, and it's really important for me to say this as you see this polished, gorgeous woman who has a black belt, by the way, who you're just so intelligent in the way you speak and connect and train. I think people, if they don't know, like your upbringing and all that you've fought through and all that you've overcame, you're an overcomer. And I want to go there today because there's so many people like us who have had traumatic upbringings.
Absolutely. So I think one of my favorite terms is post-traumatic growth. So we all hear this expression, post-traumatic stress, disorder, which I don't like that term. But there's also post-traumatic growth. There's resilience through all of that. And so what is the difference? The difference is having that resilience. It's grit. And, you can actually, even if you have been in that place of feeling like a victim, you can train resilience. And that's a really important thing. And in my mind, just because I was victimized at certain times as a child doesn't make me a victim. And so there's a big difference. So just how you respond to something can make a huge difference in the outcome.
Absolutely. So tell us about that childhood and your upbringing and how did you gain all that resilience?
So they've done a lot of studies on something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. You can take your test. You can go online, just Google ACE scores, and you can take a quiz. And they score them from 0 to 10. Okay, 10 being the worst and 0 being, the least offensive, if you will. And mine's an 8.
And I'm a 7.
So it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of that's a lot of chronic childhood trauma and chaos that you go through. So my childhood was very chaotic. My mother was a 16-year-old runaway who didn't finish high school. She lived on the street for a while. But she's tough. My mom's tough. She has grit. Her biggest problem was that she was also very codependent and thought she could save people who probably should not have been in my house. Like my heroin addicted uncle who lived with us, and that was the whole story. And my other uncle who was murdered because of him when I was young. And I still remember those events and the police being in my house and everyone screaming and feeling lost and, being abandoned by my dad. And there was sexual abuse. And I had cancer when I was in my 20s. And I developed an eating disorder just because of all the stress and chaos and trauma and drama. But at some point, you just get tired. You're like, I'm done. I'm done with all of this. And you figure out how to fight and how to turn that around. And I think one of the most important words I learned was responsibility. And it was taught to me by my heroin addicted uncle when he cleaned his life up.
Wow.
And he looked at me because I was feeling sorry for myself. And he said, how much responsibility are you willing to take? And I was like, this isn't my fault. It's not my fault I got cancer. It's not my fault all this stuff happened to me. He said, I didn't ask you how much blame you were willing to take. I asked you how much responsibility you're willing to take because it's the ability to respond. And he said, if you take 50% responsibility, you have 50% chance to change it. If you take 100%, you have 100% opportunity to change the outcome. And it was just a light switch moment.
How old were you?
I was in my early 20s when I was going through all the issues with my cancer and the treatments and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So before you had that epiphany, like, I'm going to be 100% responsible. And it's it's wild to me because I was 23 when I was taught no blaming, justifying, complaining, because I wore that as a little bit of a victim thing, like dad left, all the things, the eating thing. Oh my gosh, so much to unpack here. But when that switch happened, like what did you do next? Like, how did you start conditioning that new mindset of, gosh, I don't need to be a victim?
So that's funny. My husband calls me a seeker, and I think that was the new thing. Is I'm like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can, and I remember it was sort of a journey. It's you have these moments. I think there are several, moments that we all have that you remember that were big moments. So that was one with my uncle. I remember someone handed me Tony Robbins tapes, and I was like, okay, self-help tapes, give me a break.
Right.
But it wasn't that the self-help tapes changed my life. It was that within those tapes, there was this aha moment that was like, oh, you mean I don't have to believe the way I think? That there's another way to think. And so that was another moment, and then I had met Byron Katie at one point. There were just these moments that happened that are, these very blessed moments, I'll call them. And so I went on this journey, but I was proactive in it. I set out to go on this journey to change my life. And so that's why my husband will call me a seeker. To this day, I'm constantly in some sort of course or seminar or doing something just because I want to. You become like the people you hang out with.
Yeah. And it's that drive, though, the seeker part. Oh, I get like fired up right now because I was just talking to someone about this. I'm like, there's two types of people. There's those that buy books, buy courses, go to events, and they just don't read it. They don't watch it. They don't apply it. They don't do anything. And then there's the types that like hang on to every word. They write it. They rewrite it. Like when I was, really working on my mindset, I was like rewriting my declaration statements, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pray and I'm going to ask God and I'm going to read and I'm just going to marinate on this. And there's two types of people. And for you, like,
I'd tape them to my mirror.
I love it.
And I remember this is really fun because I actually wrote about this in my recent book. I wrote a book called The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. And in that book, I tell this story. I remember journaling when I was at that time in my life, in that very vulnerable, critical turning point. And I mean in detail, what my life was going to look like, where I was going to live, what neighborhood I was going to live in, what car I was going to drive, what the guy I was going to, end up marrying was going to be like, like every single detail. And I forgot about it. Like I put it away, I moved a couple of times and all these things happened, and I came across it. And this was probably maybe 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I came across it. And I kid you not, everything on there was like checked off. The only things, I even said I was going to be a New York Times bestselling author. The things that were not exactly as I described, the car was the same car I said that I was going to be driving, but it wasn't the convertible because I had a baby. And I was a New York Times bestselling author, but not of a novel, which I had thought I would be. It was of a self-help book. It was of health and nutrition and
Oh my gosh, scripting.
It was weird.
It's
just weird.
It's weird, but it's so powerful.
Yeah. Because the power of your mind, your thoughts matter.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, I want to back it up to the ACE test. And this is how I know is a divine appointment, me meeting you, because it was so strange. I had never heard of the ACE test ever. 1 month before I met you, I heard of it, took the test, and I started to like really honestly identify and realize, wow, this is why I've struggled, because I've gone through so much before the age of 18. And I had no idea of it. And then literally 1 month later, I met you and you were like, I'm an 8. Actually, Emily, I teach on this. I'm like you're like an expert on it. I was like, this is so divine. But something you mentioned is like stuff that happens before the age of 18 and how it shows up in our life. And for you, one of the things was the eating disorder. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like, do you think it came from what happened when you were younger?
Or I don't think anything. I know it was.
You know it was.
So I'm a self-proclaimed expert on this.
I love it.
Because I did so much work. I literally became obsessed when I learned about the power of adverse childhood experiences and what the effect is on your health. I never could understand why I was such a sick kid. I was what you call a frequent flyer in the hospital. I was constantly in the doctor's office, in the hospital. I was always on antibiotics. I've had 10 medical surgeries, even though I look healthy, and it just never made sense to me. And when I heard about these ACE scores and I started really researching it, I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. So when you have a score, so they score it from 0 to 10,
Yep.
if you have a score of 4 or higher, you are more likely to have 7 of the 10 leading causes of illness. When you have a score of 6 or higher, you die on average of 20 years earlier. And that's of all preventable causes. It's not, at first they were like, well, yeah, that makes sense because you're more likely to be an addict. No, it's of heart disease, cancer, diabetes. It's like of all causes that are the chronic diseases that we know of. And so the question became why, and they started researching it. And it's because when you are exposed to that kind of chronic stress as a child, so they did studies, and what happened is your brain, the brain of a child who goes through chronic trauma at home is the same. It's the same as a soldier who comes back from war.
Wow.
Okay, so they have the same brains when it comes to emotional trauma in their brain, that they look the same. But when you do that as a child, when that happens to you as a child, you have a developing brain. So it's different because it affects how your amygdala develops, how your frontal lobes develop, how your hippocampus develops. So it changes things like your memory, your judgment center, your emotional, like it fires up your emotional brain, and it doesn't develop normally. And that's the problem. And it raises cortisol.
Yeah.
And now you begin to release stress hormones. It's a little like having a tiger around the corner in your house. You never know where the tiger's at, and you're always ready to like be attacked. And so your body just becomes constantly in that state of fight or flight. And this is why you get sick more. So that's why I became this expert in it. But when you ask about the eating disorder, it's because for me, I think eating disorders are complicated. They're very different for different people. They can actually be because your hormones are not balanced. There are hormones that actually affect how you feel, how your stomach stretches. I mean, it's very complicated. It's not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
For me, I was very clear. It was a way to release anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so I just didn't know what to do with all the pent up anxiety. And then I ended up discovering exercise. I'm like, I can't keep doing this, when I really understood and learned that it will, oh, you mean your teeth will rot or your
Right.
heart could stop? Like I didn't know all that when I first started down that journey. And when I learned that, I was pretty vain, and I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. So I ended up transferring that energy into extreme exercise, which wasn't really great for me, but it was better than bulimia.
Totally.
So I just transferred purging into sweating.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So something I've shared a little bit, but not a lot, but I have suffered with eating as well.
Mm-hmm.
And literally in this moment, I'm realizing it was to release anxiety.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it can be so different for so many people.
So many people, but this all makes sense now because it was like escapism, definitely escapism. And like for me, it started more after I competed in fitness. And then I was like,
it's a rough world.
I can't maintain this body. But then the anxiety stuff, and then it was like a release, almost like feeling better. Mm-hmm. How did you overcome that?
So like I said, initially it was a journey, because initially, like I just transferred, I was young. Like at 16, I became like an extreme exerciser. So I talk about the journey in my book because it's too long for right now.
Right.
But I transferred that energy into exercise. And then over time, it became this natural evolution, especially in my early 20s after having cancer. So what happened was when my form of anxiety control was taken away from me when I had cancer, I actually relapsed back into the eating disorder. I thought that would never happen again. That could never happen again to me.
Right.
I was over all of that. And then when I couldn't exercise, it shocked me, but that showed back up in my life. And I was so freaked out that could happen again. And that's when I began to really figure out, oh, I actually need to do deeper work on this. Like that. So when that word responsibility showed up in my life, it's like, okay, I need to take responsibility for this. And then it took a while, it's a journey, but I started to learn how to manage anxiety for real, and not manage it, but actually like dig into it. What's causing it? What's the root cause of this? So EMDR, I'd say, is one of my favorite things. It's a form of therapy specific to trauma. and it helps you actually reprocess where trauma is stuck in your brain.
Okay, so how, when, where, how do we do that? Tell us all about it.
So it's very interesting. They've actually studied EMDR on police officers. And after 8 sessions, so police officers who have been in shootings. And so they're very traumatized from it. And so after 8 sessions of EMDR, most of them had released the trauma. They'd reprocessed it and learned to let it go. And so it's not like they don't remember it, they do. They remember it clearly. It's just that they don't have that same trauma reaction to it. It doesn't hold the same power over them. And so it's a very interesting thing. It sounds very oversimplistic, but it actually works. You can either do tapping or you do your eyes going back and forth, and they'll hold a little wand or their finger, and while you bring up the traumatic experience, and then there's a way that they do it. It's a whole process. But what happens is your brain, which can get stuck in the hemispheres on a traumatic experience, begins to process. And then what you do as that's happening is work your way through it with the help of a therapist. You work your way through that memory, and then they will work you into how would you like that to turn out instead. So it's a little bit of a process, but it really is about reprocessing in the hemispheres.
Wow.
It's like a shortcut through years of therapy.
When did you discover that?
So, this is a problem with dating a shrink.
World-renowned shrink. Yeah.
So I ended up, when I met my husband, I almost canceled my first date with him when I found out he was a psychiatrist. But he was too cool. And so we ended up, so I kept thinking, okay, I'll get rid of him soon. And then I never got rid of him. And so finally, his first gift to me was 10 sessions of EMDR. And I'm like, oh, you think I'm really screwed up.
Oh, what a gift. Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I'm not going to therapy and banging my head up against a wall. I had this very, very, I thought what was a good facade. Apparently it wasn't that good. A great facade it took me years to build. It was like I lived behind this wall of makeup, hair, clothes, and nobody saw behind that facade. Nobody knew anything, nothing about my past. And so I'm talking like this, never gonna happen. And so there was this wall of perfectionism.
Wow.
And except Daniel, somehow, it's the problem with shrink, is that they know how to weasel their way into that. So he gets me these 10 sessions of EMDR, which I didn't want to do. But when I went, what was so interesting to me is it was so different from going to therapy where I just talked and talked and talked, which annoyed me.
Same.
And they just get right down to it. And it's like this shortcut, and they just get right down to it, and it just helps you reprocess. And I was shocked at how quickly it began to work. Now, that said, on my own, I ended up doing 2 years of it because I have a lot of stuff to unpack.
Yeah.
But it was so helpful. I credit that, a big part of that, to why we are together today.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh my gosh. Okay, there's so many ways I want to go. Let's go back to the ACE thing for a minute, because I've started to have people do the test. And I'll be in a room of 100 people, and at least 90% stands up for 1 or higher. But what I'm finding is about 40% stand up for 4 or higher, maybe even higher sometimes. And the big thing that they ask, literally, they're like, so what do I do with this?
Yeah, because they feel like, well, it's not my fault, but it happened.
Right.
And the truth is, you can't change that score. You can't go back and change what happened.
Right.
But you do get to change how you respond to it.
Oh.
Okay, so that's a big thing. And this is where people get tripped up. It's like, why again? It's not my fault. Again, it's not my fault. You're not to blame. Those things happened. And that's why I became so obsessed with it. Because I'm like, this isn't okay with me. Like, I had cancer that kept coming back. I had been through treatment. I've had, like I said, 10 medical surgeries, 2 of which were from cancer. I've had 3, radiation treatments, experimental treatments to get rid of it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was on medications to manage the side effects of other medications. I'm like, I'm done with all of this. But what do I do? And so that's why I wrote 10 books, okay, was because I was like, I need to figure out what to do with this. So I went on this odyssey to figure it out and heal myself. And really, the power of lifestyle and meditation, we hear about it so much, and it's like so overstated, it seems like, on social media. But it's real.
It's real.
So learning how to manage your mind, learning those simple lifestyle things with, and it doesn't need to be as overwhelming as we make it. I get a little bit weary of like, you have to do it this way. It has to be my way.
Right.
It's like, I don't care if you're a vegan. I don't care if you're a caveman.
Right.
It's like, whatever works for you, because no two people are the same. Let's take a look at your important health numbers. And if you're vegan, let's just help you be the best vegan you can.
Right.
They actually did 2 studies back in the 80s. And all they did, eat more vegetables and fruit, eat more grains, and cut out processed foods. And people got better. They didn't even take into account smoking, drinking, none of that, stress, 0. And people got better. So we know if you eat more vegetables and fruit and you move your body more and you cut out processed food, you're going to get better. So let's just start small.
Yeah.
Start small, start where you're at, take your own values into account. And if you're a vegan, let's make you the healthiest vegan. If you like meat, eat healthy meat, okay?
Yeah.
Just figure out what works for you. There's no one plan that works for people, but the power of meditation and prayer go so far.
So far.
For managing your stress.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't want to go to the gym for an hour a day, go for a walk.
Right.
Just start small.
Yeah. What I have found is in these environments, a lot of people, like if they were molested, if they were in an environment where mom got beat up all the time, all the things, it's like, what I am surprised at, they haven't even admitted it, talked about it. I had a couple about a month ago, they pulled me aside from stage and they said, we've been married. And like, he just told me during this exercise that he was molested, and like, we have kids. And like, I'm like, it's the first time they're ever even talking about it. And I'm like, okay, if you don't heal, if you don't recognize first, and how are you going to be able to heal something you're not recognizing?
Well, and if you don't heal from what hurts you, you bleed on people who didn't cut you. And so it's a really important thing. And so people walk around going, I did it until I was in my late 30s. I'm fine. Fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, but I'm fine.
Same. And I really struggled with men and relationship and letting love in. Like when I first met Jake, he was like everything I wrote out. I went to the beach and I wrote out what I wanted in a man. I was not going to settle. But then when he finally arrived, literally with roses all the time and all the things.
It felt weird. It didn't feel natural.
I rejected him.
Me too.
They try to love you. And I was like, no, there's got to be something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we could go on and on about this. So Daniel he jokes around. I try to say I didn't, but it's probably true. He's like, he'll tell people I tortured him for the first year and a half. Why he tolerated it, I have no idea.
Oh my God.
But he'll say that I tortured him. He's like, he'll say, because I knew that you were amazing and that you had been through a lot. And he's like, I just knew that there was more under there. And I'm like, I pushed him away. I broke up with him 3 times. I was fine as long as we just dated casually. But he kept wanting to marry me. And I'm like, stop it. Because I'm like, it freaked me out because I'm like, first of all, I thought he was manipulating me.
Yes.
I'm like, nobody is this nice. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall.
Yep.
He's full of it.
Yep.
He's playing a game to get me to manipulate me to do what he wants. And he's way too nice and it's all BS. And so I just kept breaking up with him.
Oh my God,
No, I had to. So that was what EMDR helped me with. It helped me reset that template because my template was set for men to be abusive or manipulative. So when they're not, it feels unnatural. When they're not, you think something's wrong. And you have to do that work if you ever want to have, because I did the same thing. I wrote it out and he fit everything I wanted in a man. He fit everything. But then when that shows up, you're like, wait, that's way too good. That doesn't make sense. And I'm not used to good.
Yeah.
Good is too good for me.
Yeah.
And so you're waiting for the other shoe to fall.
Yeah.
You and I could go on and on.
On and on.
Yeah.
I mean, I broke up with him a few times too. And I was like, there's got to be something wrong. He's going to cheat on me. He's going to and so finally, like I sabotaged
and
the
he's
thing.
So nice.
I mean, he's the best. I mean,
and he's so good looking.
Yeah,
and he's
I know.
So sweet.
It's the love of my life. But I had to go because so many women will be like, I want that kind of relationship that you guys have. And they've been through trauma, drama, all the things. And like, I think we should share with them, like, you gotta be honest about what you've been through and go to the depths to heal.
Because you will ruin a good thing when it shows up.
You will ruin it.
You will sabotage it.
We take it from us. Like, you will.
Why I am in the position I'm in now, I literally thank God, like, so often, because I'm like, what guy puts up with me?
Yeah.
What?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's amazing when you actually like recognize. Hold up. Are you ready to take your brand to another level? And maybe you might be thinking, brand? I don't have a brand. Oh yes, you do have a brand. And chances are, if you're listening to this right now, you also have a message that you are ready to get out into the world. Well, if that is you and you want to take things to a whole nother level, when let's just face it, it's required in 2023 if you want to stand out in a noisy market, then I want to personally invite you to the It Factor Bootcamp Branding Edition. Now, this is not just any boot camp. What this is a couple days of you away from your crazy busy life, and we have curated 2 days of absolute brand integration. We are going to be helping you identify your brand message. We're going to be showing you how to create next level content, have a plan that matches whatever it is that you're selling and who you're selling it to. We're bringing in some of the best PR people in the world to teach you how to self-promote and then also how to stand out and to really create that halo effect, what I like to teach on. There's so many other details happening, but what this is an intimate 2 days with myself and my partner Jake. And I promise you, by the time you leave, you will feel equipped and totally ready to take your brand to another level. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then join me in Southern California towards the end of July. Send me an Instagram right now at It's Emily, ITSEMILY. Send me the word bootcamp and I will send you all the details. But act fast because we are releasing this week and we are limiting it to 50 spots so we can intimately work with you and also network. So if this is something you're into, go to my Instagram now and send me the word bootcamp. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the wearing the mask thing because again, like so many people can relate. I can relate as well. Like I didn't share certain things. I'm like, I don't want people to think something about me. Like, it's like I just wore a mask. And how long did you do that? And when did it start to come off?
Oh, when I was like 38, 39.
Yeah.
Like, don't be me, because it's miserable. And so I had this very, very solid, people thought that I had it all together because I was pretty successful. I didn't have debt. You know, owned my own house, had a good job. Like I dressed up every day. You know, I had the facade, I had the wall of makeup and clothes and whatever. And I looked like a good package on the outside. Mm-hmm. And so there was no way, nobody knew about my past, not anything about my past. And if you asked me anything about it, I'd be like, oh yeah, it was great. And I would there was no way you were gonna know that. And so it took Daniel actually getting below that. And so, it was really difficult and I never talked about it, but it's like having a boil. This is gonna be really gross, but it's like having a boil and it's painful until it pops. And when you finally pop it, it's really gross, right? It's ugly, it's gross, and it goes everywhere, and then it's messy, and then it's just relief. And then it heals, and it's amazing. And what happens is, for me, after that boil popped, it was a little weird, going through all that, and it was like, I don't know what to do with all this mess. And then you heal all of that, but you don't care what anybody thinks anymore.
Straight up.
Like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd be a person who just doesn't care what people think. So, and I had to get to that place before I could ever imagine sharing it with people.
Right.
And even after I got to that place, I'm like, yeah, I've dealt with all that. I don't really need to air my dirty laundry because all these people are still alive in my life.
Yeah.
So I don't need to go there. But I realized, there are so many people struggling that if I only help a handful of them, it's worth it.
Oh, and you're helping more than a handful. And I love the way you just articulated that. It's almost like you can feel the boil and then it pops and there's like a release. And I know, like, for me, I felt like I was living a lie.
Yeah.
And it was like out of integrity on a lot of things. And I just felt like I could give, but I couldn't give fully.
Yep.
It's like I was stopping on the 10-yard line.
So I'm going to go back to what you said. I just want to take you back for a second.
Yeah.
What you said about the love of your life. Okay, how can you possibly connect with someone on a deeper level if you can't let them see beneath the surface of you because you need to maintain that facade? You can't.
You can't.
Because you need to be this perfect person, so you can't let them see the mess underneath, so you got to push them away.
Yeah.
And so you're going to constantly sabotage whatever happens in your life because you can't let them see that mess.
Right.
My husband is the only person. When I finally like popped that boil, and I was like, ew, ugh.
Yeah.
This is like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I decided to test it. I'm like, I'm never getting married again because my first marriage was such a mess. I'm never getting married again unless it is someone that I can literally tell everything to, like I would my best girlfriend. And it's like, and I decided to test it. I'm like, I'm going to test this thing. And I don't care what he says, he can go away. Like, I feel like I almost tried to push him away by telling him way too much.
Yeah.
It's like TMI.
Yeah.
And he would just be like, cool. Like, the more I told him, the more he was like, awesome. Like, that's so interesting. I'm like, okay, you're just lying now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did it because I was like, I'm not going there again.
Yeah.
Like, I finally got to that place where I'm like, I'd rather be alone than have to do this again. Like, I just don't, I'm too tired. And so shockingly, he just, the more I told him, the more he loved me. You can find that person, but you have to fix you first.
Yeah. Amen. And you got to go to the depths and be that open to, like, I feel like, and you and Daniel's relationship, like, I can just tell by the way you look at each other. You can't manufacture that. You can't sell that. You can't, like, it's so real. And I can tell. And the reason I think a big level of your relationship is like that is because you're both are so honest, and he's your person and your best friend, and you trust him. And that's, it's been such a example for Jake and myself, because that's where we're at. We're ride or die. We're BFF. We're, we don't care. Like, I'll tell him like my deepest, darkest secrets. But 5 years ago, I could never imagine telling a man that. I could never. I'm like, no way. You're going to judge me, leave me, whatever, hurt me.
So I'm going to leave you first.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave you first. So
I'm going to leave you first.
Yeah.
So that's, Daniel even looked at me, he goes, I bet you haven't really been broken up with because you leave first. I'm like, oh, ouch.
She's the killer.
Yeah. He called me the Black Widow.
The man eater.
He used to call me Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had one person, like, I remember with my girlfriends in LA, they're like, you're kind of like you're not a man eater, but you're kind of like, I'm like, well. Yeah.
He told me he was going to write a book called The Black Widow Diaries. I'm like, don't you dare. You cannot do that. But it's really fun. You talk about relationships. So our kids think we're so gross and so weird, and they can't have their friends over because he's always walking around grabbing my butt or doing something. It's so ridiculous. And we were looking at a house recently, and we thought we were alone. And so we were in the bathroom looking at, because it had a his and hers bathroom, which is really like kind of over the top. But so he's like, he comes in, I was in in one of the bathrooms, and he goes, I don't like this house. And I go, why? And he goes, I'm not getting ready away from you. And I go, what? He goes, I'm going to be in here bothering you when you get ready. I don't want a house like this. And I didn't know that the agent was listening and was going through a separation and started crying. Oh. And he's like, I've not, in all the time I've been selling houses, heard a couple that's been married, as long as you have, talk like that to each other. And he's like, and it makes me sad, but happy at the same time that there's hope.
It gives hope.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, how do you guys have that kind of relationship? Like, you're so productive. I don't like the word busy because you're productive. You guys are changing lives, like truly doing deep work, individually, together. The legacy you've created, you're in demand. You've got a family, which we need to expand on. How do you guys keep that, like, spice, love?
So it's not perfect. People are always like, oh, you guys have the perfect relationship. Yeah. First of all, we acknowledge that it's not perfect, and we're okay talking about it. Yeah. So, you have to, if you can't acknowledge where some of the issues are, then you're going to have problems.
That's right.
So when there's a problem, we talk about it. We're kind of a normal family, but we have, I think, better skill. maybe that's what it is we've worked on the skill about talking about things. We're very yin and yang, and we appreciate that about each other. I'm very intense. He's very mellow. He grounds me. And we don't, instead of being upset about that, about the other person, we sort of cherish that. Like, I love that he grounds me. I'm still going to be intense. Like, it's not going to change me, but it helps to ground me. We also, I think you have to have a short memory. So you just, I think so many women just can't let stuff go. I mean, come on, women,
Yeah, don't keep
know
score.
you do this.
Don't, yeah.
If you don't have a short memory, you're not staying married. And,
Right.
and let's just, if you have sexual trauma, get it fixed.
Yes.
Because that's going to devastate a relationship. Because sex for a man is just an important thing. Let's just be honest. And as I've entered menopause, this has become such a big thing that I've talked to women about. Because they're like, yeah, but I don't feel like it. I'm like, yeah, but is it worth investing in your relationship for?
Yeah.
You may not always feel like it.
Right.
But it's not just about you.
Right.
And so you just have to really, sex isn't just about how you feel.
Right.
Just like love isn't how you feel. It's an action.
Yeah.
It's not just an emotion.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about, sex or making love or whatever, that is a very big, important cornerstone to a relationship. And so if you want to stay married a long time, work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
make it happen.
Like, you should be doing it like a couple times a week.
Yeah,
Daily.
you've got to.
Yeah.
Several times a week.
Yeah.
Because it's if you're not in the mood, think of it as an investment in your relationship. You'll
Yeah.
get in the mood
Yeah.
once you go through the action.
Oh, yeah.
But you just have to think of it like, I'm doing this to protect my relationship.
Yeah.
You don't take care of your man, someone else is going to.
This is so real and so good. Growing up young, had trauma around.
Me too.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I didn't want or wasn't comfortable
Yeah.
with sex. Do you find, did you have to work on that?
So I think when women go through sexual trauma, it can manifest many different things. Some women become hypersexual. Some women become asexual. Some women just shut down and just go through the motions. It really depends on how you processed it and what happened. So for me, I think it was different. I write about all of this in my book. I kind of became the thing that I hated. And so for a while, that was not a healthy thing. And it was more about, I'm going to hurt you before you can hurt me. And I had to really work on that. It was not, that's why Daniel called me a Black Widow. I was like, yeah, no, you're not going to get that chance. And so I'm like, I'm going to play the player. And that was really toxic. And I'm just being really honest right now.
I love it. Yeah.
So I write about that in my book. But for a lot of women, it's more like, I can't be touched. And so that either way, you got to work on that. You can't
Yeah.
have a healthy relationship either way.
And would you say therapy working on that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where EMDR came in. In fact, I was like, I'm fine. It's just such a lie. I mean,
Yeah.
I just wasn't, there was nothing fine about me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Do you continue to work on yourself and continue to do these things?
So we actually have the teenage girls in our house all going to preemptive therapy so
Yeah.
that they sort of have a foundation of how to communicate going into relationships. I mean, if I had had that, I'm like, what? What?
I know.
Just to understand what to pick, what to look for, how to communicate before you even get into a relationship. What a concept, right?
What a concept.
And so
You don't just marry who you're proximity wise and who's in your class.
No. And so that's why I still
Yeah.
I don't go often now, but it's more like when I feel
Yeah.
like things, because even good stress is stress, and we are really busy people, and I
Yeah.
don't want that to start to take away from my relationship. So I just work
Yeah.
on some of that and how to manage it.
Yeah, we recently had Jason Whaler on the show.
Yeah, I love him.
Who
He heads up our foundation.
yes, and it was so amazing, talking about addiction and
Yeah.
recovering, and he really explained when I thought I was fine, I'm like, I got it all together, we got it figured out.
That's when you're the most vulnerable.
When he relapsed.
Yeah, that's when you are the most vulnerable.
Yeah. And I tend, my mind will do that too. Okay, we're good. And it's no. You still need to go to church. You still need to go to therapy. You still need to.
You can't, you need to be vigilant.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't always need to be hyper vigilant, because when you come in from trauma, Sometimes we're always looking for that tiger.
Yeah.
But you do need to be vigilant. You need to, I think you should always be paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So home life, how many kids do you have?
So Daniel started really young. And so he had 3 older, like moving out of the house when I met him.
Yeah.
I started really late.
Yeah.
So I was 35 when I had my daughter. And so we together have 4. And then we ended up recently, right before COVID, adopting my 2 nieces. And so it's just a big, big family.
Yeah. And why did you adopt them?
Because they're my family.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's a messed up family. So we got them out of foster care. So their ACE scores are 9. And yeah, so they're now, and really proud, my the older of the 2 nieces, just graduated high school with 2 associate's degrees and got a full ride to UCLA.
That's amazing.
Graduated high school with 2 associate's
What
degrees.
the heck?
Yeah.
That's
And the younger one is getting straight A's, you know, doing really great. So
this is amazing.
Yeah.
They have amazing guardians, parents. Like that is so powerful.
but they could have gone the other direction.
They could have.
Yeah, it was a little rough for a while when we first took them in. Yeah, because they came from trauma.
So
They came from parents who were addicted and, you know, abusive, and
So what type of stuff did you do with them, or do you continue to?
constant therapy.
Yeah.
And also training at home. Like all the stuff we talk about, all the stuff we post about is all the stuff we do at home. It's all the same stuff. It's the lifestyle stuff. It's nutrition. It's boundaries. It's nutrition. It's lifestyle. It's exercise. It's, you know, boundaries around how they can behave, because how they behaved with their family before was not how they get to behave in our house. It's consequences. It's supplements. It's brain health. It's all of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was
teaching them not to believe every stupid thing they think.
so powerful, so powerful. How, a question I get, because you are the unicorn of your family, you've, which is so inspirational. But do you ever find that, like, do you want to talk to your how often do you talk to your family? Because you're so different and you're growing and healed, and I mean it's so inspirational. Do you ever have like a resentment, or like, you know what I mean? Like,
Lots of resentment.
yeah, like how
that
does
I work on.
yeah.
So I'm close to my mom. So
Okay.
my mom, the runaway who never graduated high school, actually retired very wealthy. She's amazing. So she made bad decisions and good decisions, but she's a good role model for me because she had so much grit. And so, we all make bad decisions and good
Totally.
decisions, and she just didn't let it get her down. So we're very close. But the rest of my family, no, not really. I didn't want to talk to them. I had disconnected from all of them, except when my nieces got taken into foster care, I didn't have a choice, right? So I worked a lot on forgiveness, but forgiveness does not mean access. I can love you and forgive you from a distance. So that for me was really important.
Forgiveness does not mean access. That everyone just needs to like marinate on that. That is so major, because I forgave a family member that was toxic, and then I kept giving them access, and it kept hurting me, and it was like, I'm not drama, but for some reason there's drama. And
And they will call you a bitch.
And
guess what?
selfish.
And I'm like, okay,
you care
thank
more
you.
about your career, all the things.
Thank you.
All the things. And finally, like, there was a point where I kept allowing access. And I remember, like, being a senior in high school, it was parents' night where you make the little volleyball with their names on it, and it was like, I'll be there, wasn't there. And I was like, I cannot keep getting hurt like this. This is like, so the whole access thing, that's why when I learned that, it was like so much peace, way less drama. But I get that question a lot. Where like, I want to get better, I want to grow, but it's like you keep letting.
But you have to work on if you're a person who keeps letting it happen, then you have to ask yourself why you keep letting it happen. Why you feel bad when they cry and whine about it, because that's codependency. And so working on that codependency is really important. The day that I stopped worrying about being a bitch was the best day of my life, because I don't care what people think. If I know that I'm doing the right thing for my family, if I have peace about the fact that I'm protecting my nest, that I have boundaries, that I'm not being mean. I'm absolutely not being mean. But I have a set of criteria. And if you can't respect that criteria, now, if you change and you've respected my criteria, like these boundaries, then okay, we can talk. But if you have not and they haven't, then I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
I know my first priority is to my family.
Yeah.
My first priority is to protect my daughter, protect my marriage, and so they will come up with every excuse in the world as to why I am a horrible person. And I'm just like, thank you.
Yep.
Next.
Yep. Yeah. So this posture is so hot. It's so sexy. It is everything. Every woman out there is going, yes, yes, yes.
But it's harder to do than
but
it
it's
is
harder
to say.
to do.
Yeah.
So when you made that switch of like, I don't care what you think, this is me.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's so much freedom there, but how did you get there?
So I'll give you one book that was really helpful to me. Byron Katie's work was really helpful to me. And she has a book. So everyone knows Loving What Is, but that's not the book. The book that really I thought was really great is I Need Your Love, Is That True? And it's such a good book.
Okay.
And then there's another book, there's a couple, but Boundaries is another great one by John Townsend.
Yes.
And so it's just a great book, but learning boundaries, learning how to love yourself and learning how to not be codependent is so critical. It's so vital. And I love another thing Byron Katie said, and I don't know if she's the first one to say it or not, but what other people think of me is none of my business.
That's right.
It's just none of my
It's
business.
none of it, yeah.
It's my job to love
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
It's nobody else's.
Oh, and the freedom that is
The freedom.
It's just like your frequency is so high because you don't live in that other space.
No, it's between me and God.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Talk to me about your faith.
So so again, all this is in my book, but it's hard. It was hard. It was a hard journey. Not now. Now it's
Yeah.
great. So my dad was a Baptist minister. So my dad abandoned me. He was a drug addict. He did heroin with my uncle. He abandoned me, and then he showed up one day as a minister. And that was really interesting. But he didn't act like a minister. And then I had my two half sisters. So he got remarried and had my two half sisters, and then started doing drugs with them and got divorced again. And it was a really messed up story. I mean, when I tell you it was a messed up story, he embezzled money from his church. And so I stopped talking to my dad way early on. Like when I was like 17, I stopped talking to him. I wanted nothing to do with him. I ended up taking him into my house. That's a whole nother story, when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So that's a thing. And that's when I learned how to forgive. And so my faith through that journey was really greatly affected. And I'm like, if this is what God is like, maybe God's like every other man in my life. And I wanted nothing to do with that. And then I had a lot of deep work to do on myself, which I did. And it was like, with the help of some friends, it's like, am I going to really lose my soul over another man's mistake? Because he's a man.
Right.
That's not God. That's
Right.
man. That's a man.
Yeah.
And so that was not an easy process, but it was a process that I did. And after I learned to forgive my dad, just the amount of burden that was released, and I realized something. I forgave him. He couldn't forgive himself.
That's right.
It was so interesting.
Yeah.
I still, again, access was limited. I helped him. But what I realized through all of that was that my forgiveness, like when I forgave him and I helped him, the help was for him, but the healing was for me. And so sometimes God puts these situations in your life. Sometimes God puts people in your life. And I did not want to do it. Again, don't marry a shrink if you don't want to do stuff like this. But I did not want to do it. I argued with God. I was like, this isn't fair. This isn't not my circus, not my monkey. This isn't my problem. He wasn't there for me. I don't need to be there for him. And I ended up being there for him. And then I realized, oh, there's a reason you did this. I had already become really good at being a bitch. I didn't need to go backwards. And then I realized, okay, wait a second. You needed me to heal. Like the healing was for me. And so when you argue with God, one of you is going to lose, and you don't want it. If you win an argument with God, you lose. If you lose an argument with God, you win.
Yeah.
And so it took a bit.
It took a bit.
Yeah.
So were you resentful? Like, were you just like, I don't want a relationship with God? Like, did you?
With God?
Yeah. Like
initially,
yeah.
I thought God's probably like every other man in my life. It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like I don't want to do this. He's going to hurt me. Whatever. Or it's just not real.
Yeah.
And then because of and I don't believe in coincidences, a couple of really important people that came into my life that had a big impact on me. that were very faith driven, and just really turned my view around, and I gave it a chance. And then there are things that happen that are just not coincidence. And you realize my dad had nothing to do with God. My dad made bad choices. He's a man.
Right.
And so, and then God's been a huge, like my faith is great. It took a while. Religion for me was hard for a while.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, still sometimes religion is hard because we see people make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
But I read the Bible cover to cover. I did that for myself.
You did?
And yeah, during COVID, I'm like, I'm going to dig into this.
Wow.
And I did it because I was tired of hearing little one verse spin-offs and people like throwing out a whole motivational speech about it. And I'm like, I don't think that's what that means.
It's true. This is very scary. It's like new age Christian.
It was weird.
It's like a blend, and it's like, no, that's really not what that means.
That's not what it means.
Right.
And so we get so twisted up over, you know, and now we're in this whole fight over, you know, like, dear Lord, all these movements, all these social movements, and they're like anti-religion because they're like, but Christians claim this. And I'm like, no, actually, the Bible doesn't claim that.
Right.
Churches claim that.
It's so,
but the Bible doesn't.
It's a whole deal.
Yeah, it's a whole deal.
This is amazing that you actually read the Bible, the whole Bible.
Yeah. No, I want to do it again. So the first time I did it, I decided I was going to do it like bird's eye view. Like I needed to see the forest from the trees. So it was more just like a distant view. Now I want to actually dig in a little bit deeper. And so take more time because it's so weird. I'm going to go down a whole rabbit hole. I
love this.
But there are like there are certain words in there that if you don't take time to go, okay, what did that mean in that time?
Yeah.
Like the Greek, the Hebrew, like the time, the vernacular of the time. Because I mean, sick now doesn't mean sick meant. You know, sick means different things today.
Yeah.
So you have to know the vernacular of the time. And if you start to dig into that, you're like, whoa, like that doesn't mean what, like it's not a literal translation, doesn't translate. And then you start to go, okay, wow, like it's just sort of mind bending.
It is. I have been really trying to learn the Bible, like truly, because what I have recognized, to your point, there's a lot of churches that they're preaching stuff that is, again, it does not go with the Holy Bible. And it's like this new, it's just this blend, and it leaves people so confused, and we're going to pass that on from generations if we don't learn the truth.
Well, and it's more about, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with feeling good. It's more about a motivational thing, though, and it's like these 5 points about this one verse, but the one verse was out of context to begin with. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know if I like that.
So what other ways do you grow your faith? Like Bible reading is huge.
So, I mean, prayer and meditation is probably the biggest way.
Same.
Especially during COVID. And I did join, you know, like a prayer group during that time because we couldn't go to church. So there's a group of women that were really special in my life. Because I was pretty angry and I had to work on that anger. And I'm like, I don't think God wants me to be angry, even though I'm angry during this time. So I joined a group.
Prayer is so amazing.
Yeah, it is.
And
so I think of prayer and meditation as the same.
So, same.
So a lot of Christians get really hung up on this word, meditation.
I know.
And I'm like, the Bible talks about the word meditation is in there, like meditate on, you know, all day, you know, day and night. And so it's in there so over and over and over. To me, they're the same. I think of prayer as talking to God, meditation as listening to God.
Yes.
It's just kind of my quiet time.
Yes. So good. Oh, there's so many parts that I want to talk to you about because you're just like so multifaceted. And it's like,
I'm old.
No, no, but you don't like, I'm staring at your skin and I'm like, you are hot.
Says you.
Can we? No, like, oh my gosh, you're seriously like so beautiful inside and out. And, you know, I know that health and nutrition is such a huge part. And I'm like, are you keto? Like, can you, I know my girls, they want to know right now. Cause like, I'm like, how do we look like you look like Snow White skin? You're so healthy and fit. Like,
so you're going to hate me because this is a big point of contention with my social media team that's always trying to get me to do get ready with me videos. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Those are for 19-year-olds. I'm just not doing it. Oh my God,
you're exquisite.
Because people ask that question a lot. But here's
exquisite.
the thing. The truth is I was an esthetician before I became a nurse. And what I learned is that most products are nonsense. Just the truth. All these like billions of dollars and whatever, all these thousands of dollars that women spend on all these products, most of them are just nonsense. There are a few that really work.
Like
so I do
what?
use Retin-A.
Yeah,
I use
okay.
that's one of them. Vitamin C products they help superficially. hyaluronic acid helps superficially. It's like it will plump up the skin superficially, but it's not doing anything underneath. So people hate when I say this. It's just the truth. Less product is better, and using less toxic stuff. I don't do all non-toxic stuff. I know people want to hear that I do.
Yeah.
I wish I did. I don't.
Yeah, same.
I do the best I can.
Yeah.
But it's really more about the inside out. So someone said to me something really interesting. I think it was Josh Axe. I was doing an interview with him a long time ago, and he said, "I can see what you've been eating on your skin." And I was like, I'm like, what? Do I have something on my face? He goes, "No,
Yeah.
I can see what you've been eating." And what he meant is, he's absolutely 100% right. So people don't want to hear it. They want a quick fix, just like they want to take a pill.
It's so true.
It's hydration, it's nutrition, it's sleep. And not one diet fits everybody. I do low carb. Not
Same.
everybody does well on low carb.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and it's because I can tend towards insulin resistance really quickly, so I'm pretty sensitive to it. So that works for me. Put my daughter on a low carb diet, she's crazy.
Yeah.
So not everybody works that way.
Yeah.
But if you're going to eat carbs, eat smart carbs.
Yeah.
Like eat carbs that are low glycemic, high fiber. Focus on that. I focus on gluten-free.
Same.
I don't think it's good it doesn't help anybody. And for some people it's more toxic than for others. But nutrition, hydration, sleep, avoiding toxic things, avoiding processed foods, it's gonna show in your skin. I don't care what you do.
100%. Like if I don't do much dairy at all, and I work very well on low carb.
Yeah.
I've tested it. I feel it. I know
Me too.
it. I'm more
My energy.
Yeah, keto. That's the lane that I stay the healthiest, the leanest. But it is so.
And you probably don't have dips in your
no,
energy.
No, I intermittent fast. It works extremely well for me. I feel like it's anti-aging.
It is. And I intermittent fast too.
Okay.
So I do the same thing.
When's your window?
So I'm terrible. Don't listen.
Yeah.
Like nobody follow this because
Yeah.
it's not. I eat the most at night. I shouldn't,
Same.
but because I'm not hungry in the morning, and my body just isn't that hungry. So I tend to eat the most at around 6:00.
Yeah.
So I have like sort of a moderate sized lunch, and then I'm not really that interested in food. And like dinner, I'm starving.
Same.
And so that's when I tend to eat the most. And
Yeah.
it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
But that said, if someone is really trying to get their health under control and they're starting from a place of like saying they're very overweight or they're not healthy, I would not recommend that starting that way. I would recommend, I actually wrote the Omni Diet, and I would
Yeah.
recommend starting with eating small meals throughout the day just to get it under control, because otherwise you're going to be hungry and feel deprived. So you start with breakfast so that you get your blood sugar straightened out. You work up to something like
Yeah.
what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly what I did. I started like small meals,
Yeah.
and then it was like I discovered intermittent fasting, and I feel like with traveling and
Yeah.
time changes, like I can just crush life with intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
I love it. And then I same thing. I have my dinner. I enjoy more.
Yeah.
It's
Me too.
It's so.
I try not to eat too close to bedtime.
Yeah.
But, it's just my favorite meal.
Yeah.
And that part of it's because we always sit down together at dinner. So that's another thing I think that helps families is we all sit down together. We kind of always have done that. And so,
In 2023, you sit down together.
yeah, no, it's
As
an
if
important thing for us.
Major.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a thing where you like ask each other about the day and
We do. And
Yeah.
it used to annoy the kids. Now I think they're actually starting to appreciate it. So.
yeah, for sure. What about working out?
So that's been a little bit of a struggle for me. So I've always been like super into fitness, like
Yeah.
you said, martial arts, the whole thing. I hurt my back, and so after I hurt my back, I can't do intense exercise anymore. I like short bouts of intense exercise, so that was hard for me mentally. So now I do Pilates, more like rehab style Pilates. I do some light weightlifting, but very light,
Yeah.
and I walk. And I'm trying to get back to
Yeah.
where I can do martial arts again, but
Yeah.
it's going to look different.
Yeah.
And I just, at this age, I want to be healthy. I've really changed my values. It's like not
Yeah.
about being ripped. It's
Right.
about, being able to enjoy my family and travel and just stay healthy and being
Yeah.
able to work out into my 80s.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What about traveling? Like, how do you stay healthy traveling? Like, you guys travel a lot.
We do it with intention.
Yeah.
So if you just leave it up to chance, I will tell you,
Yeah.
I just got back from Japan.
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest places that I've ever been to stay healthy because Hong Kong was too, but we had friends who were locals to Hong Kong that were showing us around, so I could tell them what I wanted.
Right.
Still had a really hard time in Hong Kong. But Japan was really hard because the language barrier, it was very significant. So they are the nicest people you'll ever meet. It's the cleanest place you will ever see. They're the most polite, and they will bend over backwards to if they don't understand you, they're going to still help you. But they don't always understand you, and the menus are often fixed. They serve the tiniest portions. Can I tell you, I eat a lot. Okay,
Yeah.
so
No, I do.
when I
too.
eat a lot.
Same.
So-
Like I need my protein.
These people eat such small portions. And I'm like, I'm going to starve because I don't eat the grains. I don't eat the
Right.
rice. And
Same.
so I'm like, it will show up, and they use vegetables as a garnish. And I'm like, no. I need like 4 times the size
Right.
servings of vegetables
Yeah.
and not the rice, but they won't substitute. So a lot of the restaurants don't substitute. So I had to order like 4 things. And finally, by the 3rd day, I was starving and I ate the rice. I'm like, I'm going to
Yeah.
die if I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it can be challenging, but aside from that, normally, like if I'm going to Europe, it's
Yeah.
not that hard.
Yeah.
So one of the first things my daughter and I do is we look up healthy places.
Yeah.
And most places have,
Yeah.
health restaurants and
Right.
keto and whatever.
Right. Yeah. I just set standards, like even traveling for speaking hotels. I'm like, Whole Foods straight away.
Yeah, we do
Get
the
my
same thing.
berries. Everywhere I stay it has a kitchenette. And, because so many people ask, like, well, I travel. Well, it's like, you just have discipline. Like, that's really the thing. And I think a lot of people, they associate like getting on a plane, traveling is like, oh, fun, dinner. And it's like,
No, it's challenging.
Yeah.
And so I learned one thing from my friend, JJ Virgin. I like this expression: order of the menu, not from the menu.
Oh.
And so I'm like, what? And then it made sense. It's like, oh, if they've got something on the menu, you can
Yeah.
find a way to order it not necessarily together the
Yeah.
way they have it.
Yeah.
So you can always pretty much order chicken and vegetables.
Right.
So you figure out how to like get them to work with you. Get a salad and some chicken. Mm-hmm. And so I often do appetizers, so I can do it that way.
Yeah, so good. What's your favorite like supplement that you're like, this is a must-have?
Oh,
change
you
to
just
me?
opened a whole thing.
Yeah.
I take like so many supplements.
I love
because
it.
it's sort of how I was able to get off of some of the medications.
100%.
So I take a lot of supplements. But I think for most people, like I have those go-tos that the average person, like these are the staples that most people should be taking. So obviously a good vitamin D is critical. It's critical for so many things. It's critical for your immunity, for blood sugar, for diabetes, heart disease, COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's critical for so many things. So vitamin D, probiotics. If your gut's not right, your brain's not going to be right. Yeah, so those are some of the basics. So I know I'm missing something, but those are like sort of the things for everybody.
Yeah.
But then you've got, from there you want to individualize it. So we
Yeah.
actually have a site called brainhealthassessment.com
Yes.
that will help you with like your more cognitive, like performance type supplements, and they're different for everybody.
Yeah.
So if I take 5-HTP, I feel like I'm stoned. But if I take something called Focus and Energy, which is like ashwagandha, and it's more of a stimulating.
Yeah.
It's got like green tea in it.
Like adaptogens?
Yeah,
Or-
and so that actually helps me. That
Yeah.
actually helps to increase focus. So I can take GABA, and that will settle down my emotional brain, and I love that. So that will help me go to sleep. So for sleep, I love GABA. I like a little bit of melatonin, my magnesium. But then in between there, I take a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. So people can check out the site, and then, I think something that's so important is getting your brain scanned, like majorly, so you can, see what's going on. Like, did you start like dating Daniel and he had your brain scanned right away?
Yeah, I didn't know who he was when I started dating him for 3 weeks. But then he invited me to the clinic, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I was a neurosurgical ICU nurse, so I was like interested in it. And so he's like, oh, you haven't seen the clinic. Like, let me show you the clinic. And I'm like, oh, that's really fascinating. And so he scanned me 2 weeks after I started dating him. And it was very interesting. And he's like, when did you hit your head? He's like, when did you have a head injury? I'm like, I haven't had a head injury. Like, as a neurosurgical ICU nurse, I was like I was a trauma nurse. To me, that meant coma, cracked
Right,
skull.
right.
I did have a car accident, but I walked away from it, so I didn't think it counted. And he's like, no, I can see where you hit your head. And I'm like, really? And so it's really interesting. Like, you can actually see. If your brain works too hard, if it doesn't work hard enough, if you've had, a head injury like that.
What about like any of the trauma being from your childhood?
Emotional trauma, absolutely can see it. It shows up as a pattern in the brain. Yep. And we can separate. We actually published a huge study showing that you can separate and differentiate emotional trauma from physical trauma like 90% of the time. And how important is that when you've got soldiers coming back from war and they're all being put on the same treatment, except emotional trauma and physical trauma are radically different. In one, your brain works too hard. In the other one, your brain doesn't work hard enough. So if you put everybody on the same treatment, some of them get radically better and the others kill themselves. So does that make sense?
No.
No, some get worse and some get better. You need to know.
Wow.
Is their brain working too hard? Is it not working hard enough?
So then, you can see this and then prescribe the right supplements.
Well, and the right lifestyle
The right
stuff and
lifestyle.
everything. Do they need hyperbaric oxygen? Do they need, what do they need?
Wow.
Do they need EMDR therapy?
Yeah.
Or do they need something to stimulate blood flow to the front of their brain?
So good. So powerful. Awareness.
Awareness.
What do you think your it factor is?
I honestly think what we talked about a little bit, so boundaries and just not really getting to the point where I don't really care I'm super compassionate.
Yeah.
I love people. I love to
Yeah.
help people, but I don't really care what they think.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to be said for that.
I do too.
But if you ask me what my favorite thing is, it's being a mom.
Why?
I love being a mom, and I didn't even want to be one.
What makes it so great?
I can't even, it's so funny. I didn't want to have kids. And then I ended up having one because I was like, well, if I don't, I'm not going to be able to because I'm getting old. I sort of gave into it. And the minute I had her, like I had a nanny lined up. I was like, I'm no way going to be a stay-at-home mom. Never going to happen. I don't want to be home. I had a really great job. I was traveling all over the place. I'm like, I'm not going to stay home. And I laid eyes on her and I'm like, there's no way I will sell my house before I leave this kid with somebody else. It was just a weird mama bear thing. And we have been like that.
So cool.
We are so close. And it's like, how do I explain it? It's like nothing else I've ever done. And I'm not going to presume that it's like that for everybody, but it's like I feel like I'm most in my power with that. It's like, this isn't something everybody can do.
Yeah.
It's something I can do. And it's something that is so special to me. Like I'm raising a human.
Right.
Like I'm responsible for this human.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And there was just so much in there and she just became my best friend.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And do you think it's like you value it differently because of how you were raised?
Oh, I swore to myself.
Yeah.
I actually promised and swore to myself I would not. It's part of why my boundaries became so strong. I write about that in my book. It's part of why my boundaries became so strong. After I had her is when it really got powerful because there was no way I was letting that into my house and into her life. No way.
Beautiful.
So it made it much easier to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's
Yeah.
so good. I want to thank you. Like truly. I am so grateful that you have leaned in and like gone to the depths because I know that you've had to go to the depths. And
You're going to make me cry. Stop.
No, you need to know this though. Your work is significant and it's to me and millions of others, but like truly because your willingness to heal and to share it and to not, like you said, care what people think, like you are literally setting people free. You are, and you're a real role model. So thank you so much for doing all that you've done, writing over 10 books, sharing all that you've shared. You don't have to do all this and you continue to do it. And I know that
so
all
special.
of that happened for you so you could go out there and make the impact that you're making today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a role model for me. And I'm so blessed. And I know God is so proud of you. So I just want to tell you that. Thank you for being here.
You're so amazing. And you are such a powerful role model. I love that about you.
Thank you. Where can people find you?
So I'm very active on social
Yes.
at Tana Amen. My website is tanaamen.com. There's lots of free resources there.
Yay.
And if you are struggling at a deeper level, you feel like you need help with your mental health, we hate the term mental illness, amenclinics.com.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.